Good morning and welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership webinar. Today is September 21st, 2022, and I am so excited to have you all here today. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and we'll go ahead and get started. So today's topic is BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar. We're going to provide an overview and share some stories today. So I'm really excited to introduce our panel in just a moment here. Before we get started, I'd like to know, and the speakers would as well, who you are, where you're currently located, and also a question for the group. What type of riding do you do? Are you a commuter? Do you ride with a cargo bike? Do you ride a road bike? Or anything else that might bring you into the conversation today by bicycle? So go ahead and put this in the chat box so that we can learn a little bit about you and how you like to ride bike. So we're welcoming folks from all around the state of Minnesota today. This is a network of folks statewide here and advocates and educators who like to ride bikes and walk. So the webinar that we're hosting today is the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network. Our purpose is to connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. We have a BIPOC land acknowledgement statement, which I'll go ahead and read. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of the several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here, demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. You'll see at the bottom of this slide, there is a link, and Ted or Maya, if you'd like to put this in the chat box, you can click on this link to find out what Indigenous land you're currently located on or you do work on. So this is kind of a helpful tool that you might be interested in using. So this is our September webinar, and we have Q4 webinars left, 3 left for the 2022 season here in October. On the 19th, we'll spotlight the community of Frazee, Minnesota, small town in West Central Minnesota. And Patrick Hollister and Hank Ledke, the previous mayor of Frazee, will be our speaker panel for October to talk about some work that they have done in that community. In November, we'll be featuring the topic of bikes and food access in the Twin Cities, and Tony Desnick will join us as a speaker on that webinar. And then we'll close with our final webinar in December on the 21st. If you're joining as a guest today, we invite you to become a member of the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network. And you might send an email to me, Natalie@bikemn.org, or go right to our website, bikemn.org, and you can join the network there and other communication channels so that you can stay plugged in and updated about things going on here in the bicycling world. Many of you may be also participants on the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Network webinar, and their upcoming webinars in October, November, and December are on the 6th of October, featuring the topic of resourcing your project, boost grants in the MnDOT Resource Center. In November, the topic is accessibility and adaptive cycling in safe routes to school. And then in December, they're going to close out the year reviewing the annual survey results and talk about the Resource Center. So another network that you might be interested in joining. Julie J at movemn.org is the person to reach out to if you'd like to join that network. So this morning, we're going to introduce 3 speakers to the webinar. And our first speaker is one of our BIPOC own staff members, Angela Olson, and she is our education director here at BIPOC. You may have met her or seen her through an education course you've taken, or maybe this is the first time that you're meeting her through Zoom. So welcome to the webinar, Angela.
Thanks, Natalie, for the introduction. Yeah, like Natalie said, everyone, my name is Angela Olson. I'm the education director here at BIPOC. I started in March, so I'm a little bit of a new kid on the block, but I am excited to continue to connect with folks, learn more about our roles in transportation and in the world. A little bit about my background. I've been an educator for over 15 years. hard to say that amount of time, but most of my experience is in arts education. That's my background. I was previously employed at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. Have always worked in bike shops as a way to pay the bills, have done educating predominantly for women, trans, femme folks, how to do basic maintenance, how to ride confidently, and even just how to lock up your bike, how to dress for biking, things like that. So when this opportunity came up to join the crew here at Bike and Men, it seemed like a great kind of marriage of my personal experience and my professional experience. So really grateful to be here on the team and really grateful to be here with you all today. So thanks for taking the time to join us to learn more about our topic today. The slide that's up right now is not our topic today, but I can't miss an opportunity to kind of promote one of our main programs that we do. So as education director, I really help support all of our education initiatives, one of which is called Walk Bike Fun, a program funded through MnDOT. Walk Bike Fun is a curriculum training program with a curriculum that we have created here at Bike MN to help teachers teach their students through their physical education classes about walking, biking, and rolling safely through Minnesota. It's a statewide program, so we've traveled all over. We were recently up in Grand Marais. We've done programming in Richfield. It's a great way to learn more about how to teach safe and fun ways to walk, bike, and roll to and from school, and also when kiddos are out in the world. You know, I remember as a kid, just my summers were just spent on the bike, going around the neighborhood, right? So really wanting to empower our kiddos to be able to do that in a safe and fun way. So what's exciting now is we have just revamped our curriculum. It is at the printer as we speak. I'm going to have hard copies in my hands soon. I can feel it. And the new curriculum expands our lessons. So we have 12 walking and pedestrian lessons and 12 biking lessons, as well as an adaptive toolkit to help empower you to pair students with different types of bikes that will fit their body and their needs. The host site application is open. So if you are connected to a school that is looking to bring us to teach about this curriculum, we come to you. We spend the day with you. Maya just put in the chat our website for Walk Bike Fun. We feed you. It's free to attend. We pay for subs, and we get to practice different activities together, go through the curriculum with you step by step, and then take you on a bike ride at the end. It's a really fun way to learn about this curriculum, and it's a really great program to bring to our schools. So far, we've trained over 100 educators, and we estimate that each of those reaches about 100 students a year. So it's a really great program. So wanted to take a second to promo that. You can go to the next slide. So today we're here to talk about our Black, Indigenous, People of Color, or BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar, which is a seminar that's coming up in October 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's going to be led by our other speaker here today, Neil Walker. So this is a seminar that folks can take in order to really learn how to teach other people about biking. And Neil can speak more in more depth about the program itself. Excuse me, but you know, we've paired up with the League of American Bicyclists to offer this program. League cycling instructors, as the league says, are ambassadors for better biking through education. So this 3-day course offers them a certification where they can really hone their skills in doing that. The precursor to this course is a course called Smart Cycling, which is taught by one of our local coaches. And we have one coming up September 30th and October 1st to get people prepped to attend the seminar. So that's just a little bit of an overview on what a seminar is, what the general idea of what it is behind it. And I'll talk a little bit more specifically about the one that we're going to offer in October. And I just want to pause here because I tend to talk really fast. I have like hummingbird energy. So if at any point someone doesn't understand me or I need to repeat something, please feel free to go in the chat and say, what are you talking about, Angela? And I'll try to repeat myself. So you can go to the next slide. So what's really exciting in my time here at Bike Men is I have really learned just how much impactful work this organization has facilitated and collaborated on. And one of those really impactful pieces of work was this Black, Indigenous, People of Color, or BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar, the first of which happened last year. This was actually, I have learned through talking with the league that this was the first BIPOC LCI training in Minnesota. And it was held in partnership, like I said, with the League of American Bicyclists and Quality Bicycle Products. So that's an organization that produces all sorts of different bike products. They're a partner of ours in a lot of ways. We get a lot of our tools from them, get a lot of our bike parts from them. And they teamed up with the league to actually sponsor this seminar so that BIPOC identified folks could get scholarships to attend it. The league does charge a fee to become certified as a league instructor. And by eliminating that barrier, QBP and the league really enabled us to open up the doors to a lot of people to attend this. So legendary bike advocate and educator, Neil Walker, was our training leader last year. I believe there were 8 attendees who all became certified instructors. So at the end of the seminar, you actually get tested on your skills. The instructor, the league coach kind of watches you on a ride to make sure that you're checking all the boxes on being able to perform things safely, and also teach and show other people how to do these various skills on the bike, in the road, on the trail. So here are just a couple of great pictures that are sent to us by, y'all might remember, our previous deputy director, Nick Mason, sent me these from his house in Sweden. So just some photos of folks in action. There's Neil teaching down in the BIPOC basement. This is held at our headquarters over on Minnehaha Avenue in Longfellow, the Longfellow neighborhood of Minneapolis. So you can see folks in action, learning in the basement. And I see there's a question. Mary has asked if the smart cycling classes between now and the October are BIPOC specific. The smart cycling courses are open to everyone. The seminar that we're offering in October is BIPOC specific. So once you have taken smart cycling, we typically offer another league certified instructor seminar in the spring. So once you've taken it, you're prepped to take it again if you're not a BIPOC identified person. So we'll offer it again in the spring. All right, you can go to the next slide. So we're really fortunate we're going to do this again, and I'm really excited about it for so many different reasons. One thing I haven't mentioned is I don't want to gloss over the fact that I am a white woman talking about offering this type of work and programming. And I think it also means that I have the opportunity as a person in my position with my identity and also my position within the organization to really just help facilitate this as much as possible and to share the resources and wealth of knowledge that we have. So that's part of how I view my position in this work. Both in terms of my individual identity and also my actual profession. So again, the league and QBP is going to sponsor 16 people to take this seminar, which is really exciting. I think we're actually going to be really close to being full. I'm so thrilled about it. The application is still open, and I will share a link to it towards the end, or maybe Maya, if you have it available, you could pull it up. Anybody interested in receiving a scholarship can contact me and I can hook you up with the code to do that. But typically the course costs about $550 per person, but with QBP support and the league support, we're able to do this for free. We also received some private funding from somebody who is allowing us to pay for the travel and lodging for 2 BIPOC identified folks who want to take this seminar to come from greater Minnesota. One of those spots is filled and we still have one open. So it's really exciting. Not only are we increasing access for BIPOC folks who have potentially experienced barriers to learning more about how to cycle and how to teach cycling, but we're also, with this support, able to kind of reduce the barrier of distance and actual physical space, right? Which is really exciting to me too, because not only does, like many other types of education that have to deal with a larger system, in our case, it's transportation. Not only is many of the resources focused towards typically white folks, but it's also typically focused in urban areas, right? So it's really exciting to be able to expand this to different areas outside of the metro. We know that that is a lot more accessible in the metro. And so being able to bring other folks in is a really exciting way to be able to do this. So that being said, the seminar again will be October 14th, 15th, and 16th. All 3 days will be spent practicing, honing your skills. There'll be on-bike portions where you're in the kind of classroom setting, learning and discussing together. Neil can talk a little bit more about his training style and the content that you'll go over. But I really would encourage anybody who is curious about this, interested, can email me. My name is, it's just Angela@bikemn.org, and I can help hook you up with some more information. Maya has put the registration link in the chat box. Again, email me if you are interested, if you're a BIPOC identified person, interested in a scholarship. That Smart Cycling course is also open still. Registration is also open. That's also a really fun course. Personally, I really liked it. Jan Mathout, who's a league cycling instructor, has been teaching those for us, and she is can confirm, really a cool lady. I've really learned a lot from her, and they've been really fun to see. A lot of folks have been taking them. The other portion that I just want to mention that feels really exciting to me is we've been really working to kind of change the image of, who is biking for, right? So, if you close your eyes and imagine, you might have a specific image in your head of who rides a bike. And through this work, we're really trying to show and educate and advocate for the fact that biking is actually for everyone. And in order to do that, we have to, oh, yay. Hey, Laura, I'm glad to see you. Laura just says that she signed up and is very excited. Great. We've been communicating over email, so I'm glad you were able to join. So in order to kind of help educate about changing that image, part of it means really connecting with people in communities who are excited about cycling, but who might just not have been introduced or had the opportunity to participate in educational programming about it. So I would be remiss if I did not mention another education program of ours, which is called our Adult Learn to Ride program, which was started this year and is mostly led by my colleague, Helena Howard. I don't know if you're on this call, Helena, but really big shout out to her, who has done a great job with that program. That program actually engages adults who have never learned to ride before. They get to learn how to ride, rules of the road, basic maintenance, and get to keep a bicycle, a helmet, and a lock. And the reason that I mention that is because we have several folks taking our LCI seminar this fall who started as adults in our Adult Learn to Ride program. And what's really thrilling and exciting to me about that is that those folks can learn the skills, bring them back to their communities, engage with people who maybe they speak the same language as, or have the same cultural institutions that they share. And it's really a great way to kind of show the spread of education and really increase the access of learning that biking is safe, easy, and fun for everybody. So I think that about wraps up what I have to say. If there are any more questions about this oncoming seminar or any questions about our role in it, please feel free to drop it in the chat, email me. I've mentioned a lot some of the things that I feel really grateful for in terms of this job that I have right now, meeting all the different types of people. And one of those people that I've really had great pleasure to meet is Neil Walker, who I'm super excited to be collaborating on and facilitating this. I won't be facilitating, but in setting up this seminar. And so I'm really thrilled he was able to join us today to talk a little bit more about his perspective, his history, who he is. As we've mentioned, he is a little bit of a legend in the cycling world, so I'm excited to hear him talk more about his achievements and also just give the perspective on what it means to increase bicycling education, especially for folks of color who maybe haven't had the opportunity or it hasn't been relevant to before. So it feels really exciting that he's here. So thanks.
Thank you, Angela. It's great to hear your energy. And just kind of as a real quick recap before we pivot to our next speaker today, 3 programs to keep on your radar and register if it's interesting to you: Walk, Bike, Fun, Adult Learn to Ride, League Cycling Instructor, and in particular in October here, the BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar. So those 3, keep them on your radar, register and engage as you will. And we're excited to talk a little bit more about, in particular, this BIPOC League Cycling Instructor Seminar. This was a great overview, Angela. Thanks for doing that. We're going to dive into a couple of stories now. And as Angela mentioned a couple of times here, we've got the first story is coming from a legend. I'll give a brief introduction here. I know this is one of those things that's like you tell your story and it's maybe one of those things. So Neil first discovered cycling after a serious knee injury that ended a basketball career in college. A specialist recommended cycling as an alternative to surgery. He got on a bike, strengthened his knee, and in the process found a new life direction. He now spends much of his time sharing love of cycling with youth in diverse communities in Atlanta. Much of Neil's work focuses on communities of color and disadvantaged neighborhoods. He rides with Metro Atlanta Cycling Club and as their youth coordinator works directly with 5 youth programs. Neil partners with the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition as a league cycling instructor and teaches cycling in 10 middle schools. So we welcome Neil Walker to the webinar today.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction. First, let me lead off by saying that the word legend is, I'm not sure how that came about, but there are people on my marketing staff that get paid to put out information. So we'll lead off by saying that. It's also great to be here because Minneapolis is the place where I became an LCI. In 2010, actually, Nick Mason and Steve Clark were my instructors where I became an LCI. And it was really a great experience. In Minneapolis, out of all the places that I traveled, I've traveled to over 35 different cities, 35 states, various cities in various states, and Minneapolis by far my favorite place. I usually come annually for the Rondo Days Festival. I have a great relationship with the Major Taylor Club in Minneapolis, and again, a long-standing relationship with the former deputy director, which was Nick Mason. And so Minneapolis has been my home away from home. Unfortunately, it's just too cold in the winters to move, but we're working it out. We're working through it. So thank you for having me on here today. And again, just really excited to have this opportunity to talk about my experience, not only with the league, but in promoting bicycling for people of color across the country. As it was pointed out, I was working for the Atlanta Bike Coalition. I no longer live in Atlanta. I was there for over almost 20 years and enjoyed really was a blessing. I'm going to say it was a blessing, and the timing was so perfect to be in a city which was a majority minority city, and people were really excited about the opportunity to get on bicycles. Also had worked for REI, and they were currently doing a D&I initiative to get more people of color into the outdoors. So between the bicycling and just the connection in communities to get people active and into the outdoors, it was a great 15 to 16 years in the Atlanta area where I enjoyed just teaching people not only to be on bicycles, but to have multimodal transportation experience in the outdoors, to connect with youth, connect with women, and just really bring more of that into the urban areas, into communities of color where there was little access or even little knowledge. So that's a little bit about myself. Again, been working with the league in a few different capacities. Some years ago, about 13 of us from around the country had formed a group called United Cycling Voices. And we really saw the opportunity to promote bicycling, not only in our communities, but around the country as a united group. And the league asked us to come on board, and that's when the Equity Advisory Council was formed. And I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that there is prior to that time, the league offers bicycle-friendly designations for businesses, for communities. There's a bicycle-friendly designation for universities, and basically there are 5 E's. And prior to, I guess, the forming of the council, equity meant sharing the road, that equal access to the road. Whereas the league now changed the 5th E, because there's 5 qualifying pieces in that to qualify as a bicycle-friendly entity. And equity now meant that you had to be more inclusive of people of color. So we put together what was called an equity toolkit. And I think you can go to the league's website and have access to that material. And so that was some of the work that I feel really good about that I've done in the last 20 years since being involved with the League of American Bicyclists, as well as becoming a coach. And now, again, you may not be familiar, we've talked about LCIs, and a league cycling instructor is someone, yes, that can teach, has the ability to take the curriculum, because there's only 2 entities or 2 organizations that certify that have education as part of their curriculum. And it's USA Cycling, which is all racing and competition, and the League of American Bicyclists. And that curriculum is a great curriculum, which not only just educates people on the proper way to ride your bike, but it gives you the ability to work with other groups, organizations, schools, after school programs as an instructor to help, facilitate the proper way to ride your bike. So again, this is some of the work in 2016 or 2017, I was able to get the Instructor of the Year based on the amount of work, but I think it had to do a lot with just the number of people that I was able to connect with in that year, personally through my own company, as well as being being contracted through the league to do these seminars. So again, I'm really excited about this opportunity because I think it's very important in the cycling world as we're seeing more and more people on bikes. I'm a person who obviously rides a bike, and for a long time I considered myself a cyclist, but I started referring to myself as a person on a bike because that's what I am. I'm a person on a bike because sometimes I'm commuting, sometimes I'm just, I may be leading a group ride, and other times I'm an educator. So I'm a person who rides a bike, and I think it's really important to have the diversity that we're now seeing with more and more people of color riding bikes. And it's important because, again, I grew up in an era where I was taught you ride against traffic so the traffic can see you. And again, that's not the proper way to ride. So I think it's really important that not only we are educating individuals to ride safely, and that is really the key, how to be safe on your bicycle, as well as how to be knowledgeable and how to position yourself on the road where you're predictable, you're alert, you're visible, and those things are really important. So this is a great opportunity as I've been able to, I met Seth Nesselhoff, who is the director over at QBP, like I said, the first time I came to Minneapolis back in 2010. And at that point, I was really, really taken aback by what I saw at QBP. I just thought it was a great business, and I saw opportunity. But those conversations continued over the years. Every year I would come back, I would go again, we'd have lunch, and we continued to talk about how could we reach more people and get more people on bikes, particularly people of color, who usually for different reasons aren't recognized as possibly people who ride bicycles. And again, even in the African American community, the bicycle was sometimes considered a sign of poverty. So to have a bicycle to use as a commuter, it was kind of shunned upon. So we wanted to change the narrative. So having these conversations on, and I was really quite pleased when last year it was announced that QBP had put forth $1 million, not just for these BIPOC seminars, but also to produce mechanics, to do urban parks. But again, it's if you get an opportunity to go to the QBP website and see what they're doing in the community, it really is, I think it's an amazing commitment. And I think what we're going to see is transformation taking place in our cities and more people being inclusive in this bike field, or in just people on bikes, not only just people, but people who repair bikes, and giving opportunity to women and to other people that usually would not have this opportunity, whether it's cost or just access. So again, this BIPOC situation is not just for education. There are other areas in which QBP has stepped up and said, we want to make a difference. And so I really applaud them for their effort. And I'm looking forward to seeing the results over the next years as we look at the work that will come forth from the money that has been poured forth to actually improve bicycling, and not only in urban areas, but where people, again, that were less fortunate or disadvantaged did not have those opportunities based on cost or availability. So even with the BIPOC seminar that we'll be doing on October 14th to the 16th, I'm pleased to come back to Minneapolis to come back to my second home, because I have a lot of friends. Also to work with Angela and the staff, which is by far head and shoulders above everybody I've worked with over the years. And I have to tell a quick story, because I remember when I first came to Minneapolis, which was also the first time I saw the fat tire bike, because I had never seen those before. And I remember going to the grocery store and they were lined up outside, and I was like, wow, I've never seen that. And then they explained to me, yeah, that's what we ride in the snow. But the other thing that happened, I was staying in a friend's house and I had to get across town to get to the seminar. And I remember coming to a corner and it was I think it was right before I crossed over to Mississippi. And I remember stopping at the light. There was maybe one or two people there on bicycles with me. But within that minute or so that I was at that light, I think there was well over 15 or 16 people when I look back behind me on bicycles. I was like, wow, I've never been any place where I ran into a traffic jam on a bicycle. So I just was like, they get it here. And after that, I was on fire. And I was like, I can definitely live here. And this is a place I would love riding, and saw the trail system, as well as, again, went on a couple group rides with the Major Taylor Club. So again, and then coming down for Rondo Days and the Rondo Days Festival, just have had a great time here in the city of Minneapolis. And again, it's a place where Bike MN, as well as I think what has been done in this state is amazing. Is compared to places that I've traveled. I'm currently now living in Pittsburgh, and we have good trail systems here. And I think that bicycling is growing throughout the city. Bike Pittsburgh does a great job of promoting bicycling and a bike share program and various things. But you guys really have a great organization in Bike MN that really, really makes bicycling accessible, and have so many programs that, allow people to get out and ride. So I'm not going to be too long-winded. If there may be some questions that you may have, because I can talk all day. I can talk about Women Bike Atlanta. And again, my organization is named Cycles and Change, where there was an organization in Minneapolis, Cycles for Change. And the previous director and I were pretty close. And again, we would meet every year at the Youth Bike Summit, which is another program that I'm very much involved with, which is a great organization for young people coming together. It's my favorite summit, run by young people from across the country. Again, the work that I've done, where for over 17 years, we have an organization in Atlanta called the BRAG Dream Team. BRAG stands for Bicycle Ride Across Georgia. And it's a 5-day event where people ride across the state of Georgia. And we had an opportunity, actually, we are in our 27th year. And I'm currently now the board chair for the BRAG Dream Team, which is probably the work that, if I had to talk about and would say I'm most proud of, is just working with young people and having them have their lives transformed. Because basically, in an urban setting, most children will never leave that community. They literally live in a 4-block radius. They'll go to auntie's house, they'll go to their grandmother's house, to their friend's house, and that becomes their world. So we thought in Atlanta, when we started the Dream Team right after the Olympics, that we were going to find the next Olympian. Well, it didn't work that way. It ended up being an after-school program, a mentoring program, where we just used the bicycle as the tool to mentor young people and to give them an opportunity to dream beyond their current circumstances. And so getting kids on bikes on a 5-day trip over 400 miles across the state of Georgia, expose them to state parks and national parks. Because at 30, I think I was 40 years old when I went to my first national park. And it was Zion National Park. And I just said, you know what? Every child should have an opportunity to experience a national park. And that became part of our vision, where we included camping in state parks and national parks as we went across the state of Georgia, as well as done other long distance bike rides across the country. So life-changing experience to me. And again, just using the bicycle and my experience on a bicycle to help give opportunity to young people that may not, that hadn't had the opportunity to see anything but their community. So again, some of the best work that I've been involved with, I have a very large family, say the less, because after over 27, about 17 years as a coach, you know, those children become your children. And even today, I still am involved with some of our adults and married, but I'm still very much involved in their lives. And again, that is the work that I'm most proud of, to be able to have impact and impart into a young person's life, to make a difference for the better. So again, as I said, I could go on talking about various aspects of the work I've done, but I'd rather leave the floor open for possible questions. Again, my name is Neil Walker, league cycling coach, supposedly, or as some people have referred to. I don't know about, I'm not going to say it. I can't say that L word, but I'm really grateful to be here and share some of my experience. And I thank you all for listening. But yeah, I'm going to leave the floor open for questions, or you can put something in the chat. I'll be glad to answer any questions concerning my experience, especially around bicycling and just the lessons learned, you know. But I will say this, lastly, it was never my idea to be a cycling coach. It really wasn't. You know, I always wanted to fly. I wanted to be a pilot, and then, you know, things didn't go that way. And then I was an athlete, and really, after getting on the bicycle and being revitalized, and especially my knee being healed, I really felt, I felt like it was my obligation to share that gift, what I had learned, with other people that were very much like I said, whether they had a injury, but I really felt that I was hearing this, I want you to share what the bicycle has done for you with others. And that was really the start of me starting a career as an educator and an instructor and a coach in Atlanta and beyond. Again, as I said earlier, been able to travel to over 35 states in the US, and also have gone abroad, done some things internationally in Belize and in Santo Domingo and in Jamaica around cycling also. So it's really been a blessing for me and a gift that I never imagined would really support me even now, because there are two things you can do through your whole life, which are swimming and cycling, and I do both. So fortunate to have not only the thing that I love to do and I'm passionate about, which is bicycling, to not only to be able to teach it, but to actually be compensated for something I absolutely love.
Thank you, Neil. It's so wonderful to hear your story. And, you know, we dove right into the stories segment of this webinar today, and appreciate all of your anecdotes you've shared with us, Neil. I'll pause for a moment here for any questions that folks would like to place in the chat box. We can have Neil speak to those, or if you'd like to go off mute and on camera, you're welcome to ask a question here live as well. This is a recorded webinar today, so you are a little bit on the spot, but don't let that intimidate you. We'd like to continue some dialogue with Neil for a couple of minutes here if you would like to share anything or ask him a question.
I have one. This is Carol Andrews in St. Louis County. Can you hear me okay? I was just curious, Neil, if you've, in all your travels and things, have in particular worked with any Native American tribal nations that have been involved with bike education, and if so, if there was anything in particular you learned through that that might be applicable. I work in public works, so mostly we're talking with some of our local tribes about, you know, encouraging more multimodal options and building those, but I know the education is a big part of it. And yeah, just curious if you have any particular experience in that area.
No, Carol, I have not, but I welcome that opportunity. So again, if you could put contact information in, if you're interested in possibly collaborating where we can do something, I would love to do that. I have worked with people with disabilities, and I've worked with people that were blind as well. So, but I would absolutely love the opportunity to work with Native Americans. And so please, yeah, my contact information I'll put in the chat box.
Okay.
And and let's connect and see what we can do, because again, we can organize something again in where you're at under this BIPOC scholarship. There are still opportunities going into next year that we can schedule something and make that happen. So thank you for that question, and
Sure.
I would absolutely love that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And I did email the contacts I have with the 2 tribes that are in our one small county, but that might be another area to really focus on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. And I appreciate the question here and the connection with Neil. I will put the 2 tribes here just in the chat at the bottom of the feed here so you can see that. So Neil, have you been up to the North Shore? Have you been to that part of the state?
No, I have not. Usually when I come in, I'm in on a Thursday or Friday, I'm out by Monday. So don't get an opportunity to travel much around the state. And what I need to find out is where you're at. So we can get up there and get into the woods and get one of those cabins also.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Carol had put her contact information for you, Neil, in the chat box here, so you guys can connect after this webinar closes today. And this is great to make these connections today to lead in to some additional work here in Minnesota. So thank you for that. So I'll pause again for any questions other folks would like to ask Neil before we pivot to our next speaker today.
I have a question. The structure of cycling has been, we need bike lanes, we need this, that, and the next thing. And I'm seeing a real problem in vehicular cycling in that very often there is no place to park your bike when you get to a business. And I'm wondering if anybody is pushing that particular envelope.
So what I can answer, what I can say to that question is that there are bike-friendly businesses, and I think a lot of this is handled locally by local bike advocacy organizations, as well as Chamber of Commerce. And this is my experience as an advocate. It may be different in your community, but most of the time it's between the Chamber of Commerce, the local bike advocacy organization like a Bike MN, and business owners. And that needs to be a roundtable discussion, because what we do know, in a parking space where a car can park is enough to have at least 6 to possibly 7 bicycles if you had bicycle racks. So maybe you accommodate maybe 2 to 3 people in a car where you can have 6 to 7 people on bicycle. So it does increase traffic flow in businesses. And the league, again, does offer bike-friendly designations to those businesses that apply for that designation. But again, I think those decisions come down to local municipalities and townships, and and those things of that nature. So that's where I would say you have a voice. Go to maybe to the town hall or the city hall meeting, or find out if there is a local advocacy organization where you live that is part of advocating for for infrastructure or for access. And I think that's where I would start at locally, because that's where it has to take place.
Well, some of the problem there is franchises stepped on the line. The business wants it, and then what's a good bike rack? The toaster rack isn't one of those, and done. And then the franchise doesn't want to spend any money. And then the people who own the ground say, hell no, you're not going to drill any holes in my concrete. And there's just a lot of potholes in this whole process.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say to you, contact your local rep, your state representative, or who's in charge of your district, because your voice matters. You're constituent, you vote, you pay taxes, your voice matters. And maybe it may be a matter of organizing with other people who think like you think, who do want to have the availability to park their bike. And maybe you get a petition. There's so many different ways that you can attack it, but your voice has to be, you have to have a voice, and how you go about that. Again, I understand the franchises and things, but you pay taxes and you're a voter, and there's someone who represents you at the local level and at the state level. And I think that's another avenue to look at also.
I think there's it's going to be an educational thing that wealth may arrive on two wheels.
That's a great comment.
Yeah, I like that too. I like that.
Yeah, Richard, thanks for your question. And we want to stay focused on our education topic today. And I appreciate your redirect back to the topic so that we can direct those questions to Neil. I want to give Dorian just a moment here to make a follow-up comment, and then I will introduce our third speaker for today. Dorian?
I think I just wanted to point out what Ted already put in the chat, is that programs range from the city providing grants or bike racks to cost sharing to others. And also want to give Richard and the Mankato Bike Walk Advocates some credit, because they've done a lot of bike racks in Mankato too. So on to the next speaker, Natalie.
Thanks, Dorian. All right, so thank you so much, Neil, for fielding some questions here, and to the participants on this webinar for your questions. So keep them coming in the chat box as anything pops up for you that you don't want to forget about, but might want to ask the speakers. We'll wrap up with a little bit of a overall Q&A at the end. So the next speaker here, and I'll get the screen share up here too so that I can prompt you with some slides, is Maya. She's one of our BIPOC staff here in Minnesota, doing work statewide, doing communications and also education. So I want to introduce Maya to the webinar today. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Neil. I thought your talk and your stories were just incredible. I'll keep it really brief, but I was able to complete both the prerequisite smart cycling course and then the LCI training last fall. And it was not with Neil, unfortunately. I wish it was, but it was still a wonderful experience. I really enjoyed the on-bike skills, especially. And then I think the on-bike skills reinforced by both like in classroom training and then smart cycling, like exams, if you will, really helped kind of reinforce my confidence on the bike, and then also in a group setting. It was also super fun to meet all the other participants in the LCI training. People had a lot of reasons why they kind of took the training in the first place, or why they wanted to pursue bike education. Some people had helped previously with like local bike rodeos at their schools, or they wanted to help lead group rides in their area a little bit more confidently, or just in general, they kind of wanted to volunteer in their community. And next slide, please. So throughout the training itself, participants practice both kind of instructing and then also providing feedback. So this on the left side of the screen, the left image is an example of a grade given just reviewing different skills, technical skills, skills teaching, or on bike practice. I found that really valuable as people kind of provided feedback on a lot of different skills that you're going to have to cover in any setting that you work in as a trained LCI. And then we also got to practice different ways of teaching and learning. And I thought that was extremely valuable in terms of maximizing the chances for the participants, or like your future students, for instance, to practice what they know, as well as kind of understanding ways to minimize kind of the instructor talking at you, for instance, or like as a future LCI, I don't want to just lecture my students, for instance. And I thought it was just super fun and a wonderful way to kind of get people excited about educating others and getting more butts on bikes. And people were excited at the end to help out with their local businesses, teaching their employers and employees different mechanic skills on their bikes, bike rodeos, or kind of just teaching people to bike of all ages. I'd highly recommend it. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. So this is again, telling a little bit of the story from a participant and BIPOC staff to just give you another perspective on the experience of becoming a league cycling instructor. Does anyone have any questions for Maya? If you'd like to put them in the chat box, you're welcome to do that. Or, again, the somewhat intimidating invitation to go on video and ask your question directly live on the webinar. I know that's probably not super, it can be a little bit intimidating, but, I want to offer that up in case anyone wants to ask any questions. All right, well, I'll pause here for questions, and then if there's any at the end too, I'm going to ask a couple of roundtable questions if folks from the audience and the participants today on the webinar would like to engage in some dialogue about that. I have a couple of questions up here as participant roundtable. I'm going to just read the questions off here to share a few prompts, and then we'll close with a few housekeeping items to share about exciting events coming down the line. So today, just a couple of questions to consider as a participant, and then I invite you to share those in chat or on video. How do you see the role of education functioning when working towards equity? How does this issue impact you or members of your communities? And what types of education are missing in this conversation? So would anyone like to respond to any of these questions? Feel free to share and just popcorn in, as it were, to jump in on the conversation. And the panelists are invited to participate as well if you have some comments you would like to share.
Well, I have
Go ahead.
a comment. Hey, this is Laura. I'm currently living in Bemidji, but I have been living grew up in Minneapolis, and that's where I was doing bike work mostly. But yeah, this is something that is the main question in the work that I do. So really how it came about was I like biking, and my family and I have always biked. It was like our main form of transportation for a while and all that. And then I got as you get older, you start driving and whatever. But I went back to biking because biking was always more economic, especially in Minneapolis. It's free, you can get around places, and it's more fun and healthy and things like that. And so I started a collective, but it's more for women of color or femmes of color. Or I should say non-white women, femmes, non-binary people, to kind of feel safe around each other. So instead of going into an establishment where it's mostly men or masculine type people, it's supposed to be a safe space, because a lot of times, it's uncomfortable, or it's just not the right environment to learn or feel safe. And so the main question we're always asking is this: what makes you feel safe? Why don't you feel safe? And a lot of it has to do with where you're coming, where you're biking, the city you're living in, the town you're living in. And so I guess one of my biggest frustrations, and what I feel would be more, working towards equity, is really talking about those bike laws and the rules of the road, but also the social norms of where you live. Because like Neil was saying, in Minneapolis, it's not just oh, you see a biker here or there. It is a bike, it's packed on the greenway. It's just packed full of bikes. People barely can get around each other. And so at that point, we're not just biking for fun. It's there has to be some common, I guess it's not just the rules and the laws, but it's what we find acceptable as a community. And a lot of times it's led by white people. It's what white people think is acceptable to be on a trail and how to use trails. And it's all about I feel like that is the priority, is making white people comfortable so you can use the trails. And I don't think that's fair. And we're not talking a lot about that in a lot of these conversations. We're not talking about hey, it's not really just about biking. It's about feeling safe as a woman on the street. It's about feeling safe as a person of color with the police, around the parks and this and that. And so, we're having deep conversations amongst ourselves. But then when I go into spaces that aren't just for women of color, you know, or other bike MN, you know, or other kind of like spaces. We're not talking about the same thing when we talk about safety. I feel like there's two conversations going on. There's one that's like the real conversation about what's really going to keep us safe. You know, you got to use your U-lock as a weapon sometimes or whatever, you know, you got to, you know, don't bike on the greenway after this time at night, or between this street and this street, it's not safe. And so we're kind of being more realistic when we talk about safety. And I feel like other people don't really want to talk about that and kind of sugarcoating, oh, well, you know, this is what keeps me safe. Yeah, well, that might keep you safe, but it's not going to keep me safe. And so, yeah, I guess that's what I would love to see more, hear more about. And in terms of other countries, other cities, like Minneapolis is one small bubble. But now I'm in Bemidji, it's a totally different thing. You know, people are coming from the reservations into the city on the main highway. You know, there's no bike trails that lead into where you need to go. Sometimes you're on the street, you're on the freeway almost, you know, getting into different towns. And so I don't know, I guess I'd like to see like how people keep each other safe. I want to hear about how you keep yourself safe in your town or in your community and where you bike, you know, and like, you know, I've met people that are biking over down by like close to Mexico by the border. There's no bike trails, there's barely even streets, and they're still biking out there. And so safety is way different for those people than Minneapolis, for example.
Laura, thank you so much for this perspective. I'll just pause for a moment. Does anyone want to reflect back or respond to Laura's questions in the safety topic?
I'm going to say I can totally identify with her perspective again, and answering and even going back to the first question, which this is why I do part of what I'm doing as an African-American male. And let me also say, which I didn't mention earlier, part of why I continue to do this, because there's only 15 coaches at the League of American Bicyclists, and only 2 of us are well, actually, there's about maybe, I'm going to say there's 5 or 6 of color, but in terms of representation for the African-American community, for a long time, I was the only coach, and continue to go into spaces and places where other coaches don't want to go, to be able to teach and give the accessibility not only to the curriculum, but to position people that now have the knowledge and information needed to be more inclusive into the bicycling community. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I can totally relate to what Laura was saying. And part of that work was done with a group that we did in Atlanta, which is called Women Bike Atlanta. Again, very diverse group, but was very specific for women only, because came to find out that a lot of women were riding with their boyfriends. And then when we get into a group ride, that testosterone kicks in, we're gone. And they end up being dropped. So just had an opportunity to see, I have the vision to see a whole community of riders that didn't have the opportunity for education or to be included in possible group rides. So we were able to create a whole entity, a group called Women Bike Atlanta. And this was before the league came up with their women bike movement. And so was grateful to have that opportunity. And the ladies eventually kind of took their group and moved it forward. And again, was just someone who planted the seed, and then somebody else watered it, and the increase came. But again, looking forward to you being in the class, Laura, and we'll have some conversations about some of these topics as we talk about, bicycling in and around this Minneapolis area.
Eli, I saw a thumbs up in the screen here from Laura, so that's really cool to see. I don't know if everybody sees all the different folks in the viewer here, but anyways, you got a thumbs up, Neil. So, and I'm excited to hear that, Laura, that you're going to be part of that. I live in Bemidji as well, so that's where I'm, broadcasting from today as we zoom in. So it's great to hear that.
Nice.
Happens. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm at the shifting gears spot by the Rail River Folk School.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I teach cycling with my bike I received from Shifting Gears from Diane many
Oh,
months
cool.
ago. Yeah, so it's we come
Nice.
full circle here with this work. So it's very cool. So I know that we are at time. I'm inclined to let it run over a couple of minutes if other folks wanted to reflect back in response to Laura or to what Neil just shared.
It's so great to hear y'all's perspective and just be keeping those things in mind as we talk about, especially this personal safety issue. Laura, you've got my brain like buzzing. I really appreciate that. I just want to take a second to answer a question that was in the chat that I think I might be able to answer, which is from Marty, who's asking about is education offered for law enforcement? And I just want to let you all know at Bike and Men, we do frequently have a couple law enforcement officers participate in some of our trainings. We don't currently have one that's, as I know, I might be wrong, but we don't currently have one that's specifically geared towards law enforcement, but we do encourage participation in I actually did a walk bike fun training in Richfield, and we had several members of the police department attend. That's our teacher training program. That was really impactful, I think. We also offer ambassador training that we've had law enforcement officers attend. And then frequently during our bikeable community workshops, law enforcement are at the table as well. It's not a lot, but we are working to kind of make those connections. And it is always very illuminating to be able to share some information with folks enforcing those laws that don't know about it. So it's definitely personally on my radar as something that feels there's tension there, and it also feels important. So and I feel you about being hassled illegally. It's an issue that we don't frequently talk about, but it does happen and it does exist. So happy to hear more ideas or perspective on it, but I just want to let you know that there is some amount of engagement and just definitely something that we're keeping in our minds as we continue to think about how our education programs impact across the state.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Angela. Just sharing the energy and the connections and enthusiasm that's bubbling up as people share ideas, and it kind of prompts another idea. And then you think about how you can maybe make this happen and come together to partner on these implementation of some of these ideas to operationalize them. So other comments or questions for Neil or Maya, or in response to what Laura shared?
I did see a comment from Carol, and I just sent a message directly to her because I believe the question that she's asking, I would love to answer it, but it's going to take more than a few minutes. I think it's a conversation we can have, since we're going to connect, that we can have offline, if that's okay. Because again, I think you gave us a few extra moments to be on here, but I think that I would love to speak to that. But again, I don't think it's going to be a few moments.
Neil, is there, I don't know, 2 minutes or so that you might want to speak to it at all? Hold
on. I would say too. So I'm going to first say that the one time, for me, I'm going to use this expression. I've used this before. Riding a bicycle is the only time when white bodies are not controlling my movement, unless I'm stopped by a police officer, which has happened where I could be in a certain area. So the fight, again, I've had that experience, which I thought was kind of weird because I'm riding my bike. I mean, what's the problem? And he's asking me, well, where are you going? And why are you going so fast? And, so that is something that white bodies may not experience, but being an African-American in an urban environment where I'm riding my bike happens. So when I lived in New York City, there was a policy of, stop and frisk. So again, that feeling of being safe in a space, again, it goes to other areas, and not just the police, but just not having even not having the proper infrastructure in your community, because sometimes in the urban setting where you probably don't pay the same amount of taxes as in suburban areas, which seems to have more bike lanes and more infrastructure to support safe cycling. So that's another thing that happens where it's just you in traffic. There's not designated bike lanes, or again, there's so many layers to that question that I can answer around feeling safe in a space. So that's where I'll leave that on the table. And that may not be everyone's experience. Again, everyone not being in the urban setting, are not having the same access, or even in cities where, again, we talked about bike racks earlier, are not having the infrastructure to support safe cycling.
Thank you, Neil. Well said, as Laura pointed out in the chat box here. And, you know, I think this is really a great conversation today. I appreciate all of the comments everyone's made. I have 2 closing slides I'm going to put up on the screen, but this conversation continues. Let's get instructors all across Minnesota to teach in their own communities and get you trained to do so. This is great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, just in closing today. First of all, I just want to share a promotional piece here about the Mankato River Ramble coming up on October 9th. And also just prior to that, on Saturday, October 8th, the Rosewood Gramble in Thief River Falls, a couple of events that are coming down the line in October that you might like to participate in. If you'd like to register, it is open. And if you use the code BIKEMEM22, you can save some money on the registration fee. So go ahead and jump on that opportunity. Just to share a little bit from our partners, Safe Routes to School partners, there's some implementation and planning grant applications open now. So you'll see on the screen here a few Safe Routes to School planning opportunities for planning, non-infrastructure, and infrastructure solicitations as well, Greater Minnesota Transportation Alternatives and Active Transportation. So these are a couple of funding opportunities that you should look into if this is something you're interested in. And to close, I want to just hand it over to Dorian for a moment to share a few things with the webinar participants today. Dorian?
Hi. I just wanted to let everyone know that our legislative committee met for the first time for several months to start talking about the legislative session that starts in January. We have quite a few policy initiatives and, of course, funding initiatives that we will be supporting and tracking. And of course, always be there to oppose things that we think will make cycling less safe or less convenient and easy. And if you want to be involved, just let me know, Dorian@bikemen.org. And we've talked a lot about education. One of the things we proposed for the first time last year or a couple of years ago was that bike education should be mandatory in elementary school, just like our biking and walking safety education, just like bus safety. And it was warmly received as an idea that they wanted to work towards, but money is always a question. So anyway, we're hoping to address that. As Tony said, cycling education needs to start early, and we're in support of that. So thanks, Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And you received a bunch of thumbs up on the viewer here as you were sharing that to close. And thanks you. So Tony, thank you for sharing that, and Dorian for reiterating that. Thank you to all biking and walking advocates and educators for all you do. Have a wonderful rest of the day.